What's up, fellas? Today I want to talk about Jiu Jitsu, building confidence, and my personal story as far as how Jiu Jitsu saved or changed my life. A cliched saying, but cliches exist for a reason, right? So, before I really get into how I think Jiu Jitsu really started to affect the trajectory of my life, just kind of understanding where my life was at before jiu-jitsu, right? So I just moved as far as away, and not as far away as possible from home, but I moved states and I was just trying to live my life. I had gone from, every different diet you could think of to lose weight. But there was always something missing as far as my personal development. And I knew that I wanted to be my own person, at least self-employed, if not like building towards, having my own company and, just living my best life. But there always lacked a sense of direction and just resiliency and self-confidence, right? And this would be a video for a different occasion, how I actually started jiu-jitsu, the journey of me actually walking into my first class. But point being, I was a little lost, I was a little confused, and I needed some sense of direction in my life. Even if I kind of had some things that I was fairly passionate about, I didn't really know how to start, where to start as far as actually changing my life. And so for whatever reason, I started jiu-jitsu around this time in my life, and things slowly started to change. One, jiu-jitsu was very anxiety ridden for me when I first started. Just getting to class, it took I could find every little excuse, right? I would procrastinate getting ready, and next thing I knew, I was gonna ride my bike to class. Next thing I knew, if I was gonna be even a little bit late, I'm not going, right? So first thing, and I believe a lot of this happens to a lot of people, right? The attrition rate for people that do jiu-jitsu is so high. There first has to become a mental shift, discipline-wise, where you have to tell yourself, whether you believe it or not, I do jiu-jitsu. I am a jiu-jitsu practitioner. And what I do is I go to class Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 p.m., whatever the time might be, right? And you tell yourself at one point, that's just what I do. It's who I am. And that's what's gonna happen, right? That little shift as far as being able to tell myself hey, this is what I do. That is the start of something huge. And you can develop this many different ways. A lot of people do develop this, right? But this is just how jiu-jitsu helped me, right? Being able to build some form of discipline and tell myself, this is what I do, right? I was not a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I sucked, right? I was not good at jiu-jitsu, but after my first few classes, I was like, I like this shit and I want to get good at it. And there was this fucking 135-pound guy that was just a couple months ahead of me, kicking my ass and enjoying that shit. I could tell I was the one guy he could beat up, right? And I wasn't, I had to be 160, 165, 170, who knows, somewhere around there. This kid was just taking advantage of his power. And that's okay, right? I purposefully joined this gym because they let me start to roll earlier than the other local gym. I wanted to get my ass kicked. However, there was some friction as far as me having to get to class and actually making the difference and the change in my life, having the discipline to show up to class, because I knew that if I go to class, there's gonna be that time where I'm probably gonna roll with him and it's gonna suck and I'm probably gonna hurt for it for the rest of the week or whatever it might be, right? So as much anxiety, right? Whether you have that experience or not, I think for some people just going to jiu-jitsu at all is, it probably comes with a certain amount of anxiety, and that you're going to get your ass kicked or whatever it might be, right? Now, obviously, if you go to a gym that the vibes are just off, definitely fucking leave, right? But I'm talking about that natural kind of like pre-game anxiety that you probably have. And if you don't have that and you're just going to class and everything's fine and dandy, that's awesome, right? Or they're just, they're a little soft there, who knows, right? Hit me up, right? It could be any number of reasons. But if you are experiencing this anxiety that I'm explaining to you, this is a great opportunity to change your life, right? And learn how to, and if you're enjoying it, right? Like, you know that it's good for you, you want to do it, but all I'm really trying to say is that little bit of determination and resiliency and discipline that you develop from joining is huge. And telling yourself, I'm going to go to class. That's what I am. That's what I do. Whatever, right? You have to get in that mindset. You have to completely make a mental shift to make it happen. So that's the initial way that I think jiu-jitsu can really start to help you build some confidence. Because again, like, no one starts off good at jiu-jitsu. I was terrible at jiu-jitsu. I'm still not very good at jiu-jitsu, if I'm being completely honest. But I've stuck around, right? And I've developed a certain amount of discipline from continuing to do it. That being said, I think there's some psychology as far as once you actually know how to defend yourself and you know what would happen if somebody tries to put their hands on you, that's another form of confidence that comes from jiu-jitsu, right? So this won't happen for a while, but once you get to the point where you're really able to handle yourself at the gym, somebody walks in, it's new, never done jiu-jitsu, to your gym, and you know what it's like to be able to control them and submit them at will, that can start to change how you interact with the world. In my personal experience, I was working at a restaurant when I was still, white through blue belt. And this specific restaurant had two owners that were very kind of invasive with everyone's space, right? And so not a very healthy work environment. I think they wouldn't even, they probably would even admit to it, but it just, and I have no clue what it's like there now, right? Who knows? They've probably changed. But the situation I was in, these guys, bodybuilders, looked jacked as hell. Two brothers that owned a restaurant, and they would get in everyone's face. You could mess up an order, and they're going to be yelling at you. They're going to be giving you these death glares, and they're going to get up in your face, right? And that really affected me and my body language within work, right? And so, again, subconsciously or not, they would also take advantage of my kind of submissive body language, at least I'm thinking, right? And probably get me to work shifts that I didn't want to work or whatever. The moment, again, this doesn't happen overnight, but when you start to develop that confidence as far as knowing you can handle yourself in physical situations, and all of a sudden someone's stature, someone's size on you, it no longer intimidates you, whether you think that it's intimidating you or not, right? Because I knew there was never any real physical threat, right? There's just the the idea of them getting in my face is uncomfortable, and maybe losing your job, which, we could argue that your brain does not know the difference between a physical life or death altercation or the idea of getting fired, right? It's a very similar anxiety that you're dealing with, right? And it's gonna trigger some fight, flight, or what is this? Fawn reaction. And there might be another one, right? But fight, flight, fawn, I know those exist. And so finally I was able to kind of, again, the situation never was combative. I was never really worried about getting in a fight with my bosses, but just my body language when they would approach me and try to intimidate me. All of a sudden, I wasn't just pushed over because I felt comfortable in my own skin, and their physical appearance and their body language no longer intimidated me. All of a sudden, they treated me completely different. So just your demeanor and how you interact with the world can completely change, how you interact, right? And just in general, again, these are just ways that jiu-jitsu can change your life and help you develop confidence, right? So two different ways, right? Discipline and kind of that very primal instinct that we have in us, right? And so a lot of us like to think that we're higher beings and we no longer exist in a world where, it's like that. But, I know I experienced that personally, right? So it's hard for me to separate my brain from my body. That being said, there was another moment where I realized this jiu-jitsu thing is for real. So the discipline, it compounds and it can help you change your mindset as far as how to move about your life. So in the same scenario or the same restaurant that I worked at, I had a group of friends who I still love dearly. And, we all worked at the bar back there. And what was cool about us is, none of us went to college. And that was our little fraternity, right? Working at the bar, at that restaurant. And we were all looking to kind of grow out of that restaurant, right? And sometimes when we'd be getting treated like shit, I remember my buddy would be we'd be fucking wiping down cups and he'd be like, we're gonna get the fuck out of here one day, dude. We're gonna have our own thing. So I had some skills as far as, I was taking pictures, had a nice camera, and my buddy was an excellent salesman. He was learning how to code websites, and we had another buddy there that also was a graphic designer and doing websites, and we were trying to figure out how we're gonna put something together as far as a little marketing startup goes, right? So we had some skills that we were trying to put together to make a business happen, and eventually we were at a point where this little business was starting to have some promise, right? So we're still working at the restaurant, and at one point we had this client that was promising to take us out of state for a weekend, I believe, or it might have been a week, to California. There's going to be this big, I think it might have been a crypto conference. I don't even remember exactly the details, but we knew this was going to be a make or break moment for us. This is it. This is our moment, and we needed that weekend off, right? We were gonna take it, and so the guy that was in a little bit higher standing, he was our manager, for lack of, they never gave him a real manager position, but he was our manager there, and he was one of my buddies that we started this business. He had already asked for the time off, and then it was my time to ask for that weekend off. And my bosses ultimately gave me an ultimatum and said, hey, they weren't in this moment, like we were past the point of them being aggressive and whatever. But they did give me an ultimatum and said, you can take that weekend off, but you're not going to have a job when you come back if you do that. And it was 2 weeks in advance that I was asking for this time. So I was like, okay, I guess this is my 2-week notice. And so that happened. I ended up quitting that job for an event that was going to change our business, which ended up falling through, never existed, never even went to the thing. I don't think I would have had the confidence to say and do what I did as far as quitting my job if it weren't for jiu-jitsu. I learned how to be shit at something and how to pick myself up and try again and get better at something that I was no good at. Again, not good at jiu-jitsu, right? But I was getting better, and I had learned the skill, the resiliency of how to get better at something by doing it. And oftentimes I use often musicians will gravitate towards jiu-jitsu oftentimes because they can approach jiu-jitsu how most people don't. Most musicians, most people that learn how to play an instrument, they know how to learn a skill. No one just picks up a guitar or a piano, with obviously there's exceptions, and just is good at it, right? You have to learn the skill and you have to mess up, okay? So that's just another example. There's the resiliency, the ability to do something, whether you're good at it or not, and just deciding, hey, this is what I'm doing, right? So just another example of how discipline can turn into resiliency and help you build confidence to do the things you need to do in your life. Now, luckily, through jiu-jitsu, through the gym, I met somebody, I made connections, which is another great thing that can happen when you join jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of great people all the way up and down the social ladder. And so I met somebody that, also owned a restaurant and was interested in the services that we were providing. So this is completely separate from everything else that was already happening at the, in our little startup that I'd quit the last restaurant for. All right. So, things lined up, and luckily, I quit that job. And even though everything fell through with the current client we were with, we ended up picking up another one, and I was totally fine. Again, I don't think I would have had the confidence to quit my job and tell them like, okay, that's cool, I guess I won't have a job, if it weren't for me learning how to just be bad at something and accept it and start from nothing. A lot of us in life, we gravitate towards things that we're good at naturally, right? And while there's value in gravitating towards the things that you're good at and doing them, learning how to just accept being bad at something and growing from that is an incredibly empowering thing to do for yourself. So, at that point, I'd been a blue belt at jiu-jitsu for I don't know how long, but I was I had gotten to the point where jiu-jitsu taught me that I can do anything that I set my mind to, and there's incredible power in believing in yourself that way. So that's all I have for today. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys later. Holla back.